Welcome back to Cards and Comics. Today I'm going to be going over some Schomburg books, so Alex Schomburg, Golden Age books. I wanted to go over something that, is very common with collecting Schomburg is, you know, he had two really distinct styles. And the style that I'm going to talk about today isn't the style right here. This is his most famous style of artwork, which is kind of the busy superhero look. But later in his career, he was known, for his painted, airbrush style. And if you look at pricing for Alex Schomburg, those, airbrush books to me are super undervalued. Now, there's a big reason they're undervalued is because they're not mostly Marvel books anymore. So that's a big hit. It's not the Captain America books anymore. However, from a artistic and stylistic point of view, they're really some of the coolest books that he ever did. And as a collector, it's great because not everything is super duper expensive. You can afford some of these books without having to break the bank. But I want to go over the difference in style so that you can kind of get an idea, what's the difference in art and, whether or not you like the different style. So first off, this is Alex Schomburg's most common way of the people early on remember Schomburg was to do covers, and the most popular covers he ever did were like Marvel war covers. So this is a war cover, so this is got the Japanese. You can see that he did a lot of, motion in his book. So you have a lot of times, people flying around, bullets going everywhere. And he was always a devil in the detail kind of guy. You'd always see a guy over here, a guy over here. Like every square inch of the book, there was something going on. And that was the style that made him really famous with comic book fans, is because, he didn't mail in covers by having like one giant figure and no real background. I mean, he totally, spent time making these covers as action-packed as possible. So this is Marvel Comics 55. It's a 4.0. It's not a super high grade. It's got, a split binding here. The covers split a little bit, split around the, here. It's got a missing corner here. So it's not super high grade, but it's a very good cover to show you what was going on with, Alex Schomburg in 1944. So this is 1944. But it was just a few years later that he got into a different style. And I think reading interviews with him and other collectors or other artists that knew Alex Schomburg, the idea was, he wanted to, expand his, his style to be more interesting to himself. It was really around wanting to make art that he liked. Now, a lot of the art he did though in the airbrush style was kind of like, headlight girl covers. And so he signed a lot of those covers Alex spelled backwards, so that's Zila. So a lot of people, I guess not a lot, but if you're just getting into Alex Schomburg, you'll see these covers and it says Zila on them, and you're like, why does it say Zila, not Alex Schomburg? Well, it was because he, I think at the time, didn't want his other art, because Alex Schomburg also had just started publishing a lot of work in journals and magazines, and that was like, I guess, more legitimate type of art versus doing artwork that was, in comic books, which, even at the time, comic books were not considered to be highbrow media, and kind of like something you did on the to make some ends meet. But I don't think he thought that his comic book covers were going to be anything special, and was just doing it for work. So he didn't want to like ruin his other career that he was, building, which was doing, paperback covers and magazines and those kind of things, by doing like this other comic book art, which was kind of frowned upon by a lot of folks. So we'll move on to a cover here that to me is one of my favorite covers I own of Alex Schomburg. Now, you can see right here, it says Zila right there. So maybe in the there you go. So this is definitely a book where you can see he has signed it Zila. And again, this is 1947. So this is, 3 years later. So he has gone to this different style. And the one thing that's great about it is his attention to detail on the actual main characters. Now, and just how I call it like beautiful the colors he uses. You see the really nice pastel colors here, and you can see that he's put a lot of thought into the design, the anatomy of this artwork. Right now, where the people who don't like this artwork will come in and say, "Look, I had artwork before where every square inch of the book was covered in something going on. There's people shooting and flames, and there's a lot of stuff going on, right?" Here, it's what I talked about, the static two characters and a vehicle and a very unmemorable backgrounds that are kind of just there. And so I think, this is where you have to kind of, if you're going to collect his artwork in both eras, you have to just go with the fact that it's completely different. It's two different styles. He wasn't trying to bridge, the two styles together. He really wanted to do something different. And to me, this style is just as beautiful and as awesome as his other style. To a lot of collectors, though, they don't like this style. And the fact that a majority of the books in this style are on better public, like Thrilling Comics, which is from better publications, not Marvel, it feeds into the idea that this isn't as cool a style and they weren't worth anything. Now, the prices on these books have really gone up, and I think a lot of it is due because there are good girl art collectors, headlight collectors, and so this Schomburg is way up on the list for those guys. And so those books have been going up just across the board. Miss Mask, you've got a lot of the, I'm trying to think, Lady Phantom books. Those books have gone up just on their own, regardless of who the artist was. But having Alex Schomburg on one of those books is, just like Frank Frazetta or another famous artist, L.B. Cole, they'll make those books just more. Now, the last one I'll show you here is another style he did, and I would say that, and I don't know if this is really a different style, but you have a science fiction component. So the one thing that's cool about this is that if you go into what he did later in his career, which was science fiction book covers in magazines, he did a lot of like I call detailed, like spaceships that were realistic, very architectural based designs where he was very exact. And so you can see a little bit on this cover where he's drawing this kind of shape here, where everything is very symmetrical, right? He's definitely measuring things and making things have a feel that they exist in in a real type world, with all this fantastic stuff going on. Now, it's obviously still good girl art. This is the main character, and that's what you'll see in a lot of these books, is that still the female is the main character. She's bigger and up front, but the science fiction aspect adds into the collectability. So whereas beforehand, this cover here, even though to me is aesthetically more pleasing in my opinion than the science fiction cover, there's more people out there collecting science fiction covers and this kind of artwork than there is just the good girl and animal art. So this kind of a cover will definitely bring a lot more money at auction, just due to the science fiction nature. And so you got Errol Flynn in the background. There's a lot of funny things if you go into the artwork. The one thing I love about Alex Schomburg too is he used his own covers, swiped his own covers a lot too in different books, and those are fun to collect as well. But this is one of those covers that I think you can see elements in other books as well, that he used kind of similar motifs, how they're standing, some of the poses. So again, this was more like, I think in his mind, more like a line art. Like you're just producing this on a schedule. But the fact that he put so much detail in the books rises above that kind of factory made art that you would maybe think about during that time period. Now, again, Wonder Comics, Throwing Comics, Exciting Comics, they all have variations of different themes like science fiction, Western, superheroes. So you can find his styles of art, either his original style, the busy kind of cartoony, or I say comic book art, with those kind of characters too, and you can find the airbrush with those characters too. So it's kind of fun to have a superhero that's airbrushed versus a science fiction versus Jungle Girl. So it does kind of you definitely get both both styles of art in a lot of different subject matter too. So personally, for me, when I look at Alex Schomburg art, I don't make any real distinction between the two other than price. Meaning that I don't look at this book and say, well, I want it less than the Marvel books. I find this art just as good. And so I go after this art just as hard. Now, if pricing becomes part of the conversation, then yes, this kind of style will sell for less than the Marvel books. The Western style, if he does a Western book, that's even lower. Like romance and Western books are on the bottom of the list for genres, right? So, if you want to start with Schomburg at a budget, his Western covers will be very cheap, even in high grade. And so I think that's where you would, go for value. However, to me, this is the kind of cover I actually look for a lot, is science fiction related, airbrush covers, or these really cool like animal covers where he's done a lot of there's covers where he's done like multiple animals, and those are to me are really cool because he puts a lot of detail in the actual subjects, not the background like he did before. So but there it is. That's kind of why I want to show everyone like the differences in the style and how he evolved over time. And again, this is 1948. I encourage everyone to collect Schomburg, collect L.B. Cole, Matt Baker, the really famous artists from the Golden Age, because their books are amazing. And if you get them in, you can just see how great the art is, and it's a passion I have too. So there it is. That's my kind of review of Alex Schomburg's two styles. And let me know if you liked it in the comments. And I'll see you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.